Good afternoon, North Dakota and AARP North Dakota State Director Josh Askvig, along with my colleague, Associate State Director for Advocacy, Janelle Moos, for our first of 2020, actually our first ever, but our first of 2021 as well, all things advocacy. We're going to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about what's happened in advocacy this week. And first of all, Janelle, some people probably haven't met you yet because they would have met you at in-person events and didn't see it, whatnot. So thanks for being here and thanks for doing this. Janelle, the legislative session started in North Dakota this week. You want to talk a little bit about what happened early on this week and how much different it is up there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you. As Josh mentioned, I joined the team just about a year ago, and I'm excited about this legislative session. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. We're looking at what's considered a hybrid legislative session. We will be able to be there in person representing you and others 55 and older. But the thing is, what's most important about this legislative session is that you can join in and be involved in ways that we never thought were possible during the legislative session. You can watch committee hearings online from your living room. You can submit testimony. You can provide comments. This is probably going to be the one of the most transparent legislative sessions and a really excellent way for the general public to get involved and become part of what we consider a citizen legislature.
Awesome, Janelle. You know, the first week is usually largely ceremonial. However, again, things being just different because of a lot of things. The governor did give his State of the State address as he normally would. Usually they've got three big State of the Judiciary, State of the Tribal Nation, State of the State spread out over 3 days. This year they all kind of combined those into one. You know, couple of highlights maybe from the governor's State of the State or any of the others that you want to quick point to before we jump into it?
You know, I think the important point about the governor, he set an optimistic tone. You know, 2020 was a difficult year for everybody, you know, across the state. He really started out by setting a positive tone that even though we were, you know, facing hard times, we have a lot of opportunity in this state to look at how can we do more and do better. And so the points that were important to us and our members, really looking at, you know, infrastructure projects, you know, to support the work that we do in local communities to make sure that you can stay in your community and your home longer. So we're really focused on those home and community-based services. How can we make sure that you have access to health care in your home? You know, the other thing the governor talked a lot about is as we pivot towards recovering from this pandemic, you know, making sure that you have access to the vaccine when it is, you know, your turn to be part of, you know, taking that step forward if you choose to be part and have your first dose of that vaccine. You know, and it's a good reminder. We're hoping all of you can join us for a telephone town hall we're having next Thursday morning, you know, at 11 o'clock in the morning. We're going to have Molly Howell with the Department of Health, and she's really going to give you the details that you need to know about when to expect the vaccine to be available to you and your loved ones.
Awesome. We'll post the link on how you can register for that phone call next week in the comments after this. In addition, even though the first week is usually ceremonial, not this year. I mean, we jumped right into the fray on one of our priority issues of prescription drug prices. You want to talk a little bit about the hearing on Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah, it definitely was off to a quick start for us. So House Bill, you know, 1032, which is the prescription drug transparency bill, it was heard in the House Human Services Committee this week already. And, you know, what it means to all of you is how can we help to put a little bit of a light on what goes into the cost of your prescription drugs that you pay for every day? And, you know, we know that it's not going to be the ultimate solution to lowering the prescription drug prices for you, but it's a step in the right direction. You know, it's a building block that we're looking at using for other prescription drug legislation this year. And it's going to really help to say, if a pharmaceutical company, you know, they need to provide information about how a drug is priced and to justify those large price increases. So when you go to the counter, you know, and you're paying for a prescription drug, you're often shocked by the price. But what this bill would allow for is a little bit more transparency. So you as a consumer know what goes into that. And if you're going to see prices go up, how can you anticipate that potentially and have a conversation with your healthcare provider about what alternatives that you might have, so you don't have to make those hard decisions that many North Dakotans make do I pay for my prescription drug this month, or do I pay for, a utility bill or my groceries? I think what our whole hope is that we shine a light on that. Prescription drugs are often too expensive, and people have to make difficult choices.
Excellent, Janelle. And there were some fancy shoes in the room that day too, I think.
I saw those shoes, and I don't know if the rest of you saw them, but go back and watch the video. There was some fancy shoes at the podium.
Fair enough. So what you can do about it right now, and we'll talk about this again before we wrap, but in the comments, we posted the link of how you can send a note to your legislators today, and we'd encourage you to do that about your support for the prescription drug transparency bill. Really makes a big difference when we're up at the Capitol, especially in a year like this when there are not as many folks in the hallways. Janelle, we also weighed in on a bill with pre-existing conditions that would essentially provide a backstop if the Affordable Care Act were ever repealed. Anything you want to say about that, or should we jump into next week?
I think just what's important is that we want to make sure that consumers continue to be able to have affordable health care, that pre-existing conditions, that ban remains. We want to extend that so you don't have to really be worried about as you age and as you potentially have additional health concerns that won't impact your ability to either receive or have affordable health care. So.
Awesome. So let's jump forward to next week. We got a couple minutes left here to go through things. There's kind of three big things, well, two really big things and a third bill that we're kind of paying close attention to next week. First one is Department of Human Services budget, which funds a number of things for aging services, home and community-based services, or long-term care supports for people to be able to stay home, as well as nursing home funding. That is kind of, we really start to understand what's in that proposal, correct?
Yeah, the Department of Human Services budget, what they'll consider is a high-level overview next week in the House Appropriations subsection, really giving us a glimpse into what the priorities are in the governor's budget, in the department's budget. Obviously, we want to make sure that there's money for caregivers and, again, for home and community-based services. So if you choose to live in your community and your home longer, how can we make sure that funding is available and the services are available? And I think that's another key issue that we're following that, is in line with the Department of Human Services budget. But, the Long-Term Care Association really did a comprehensive study of nursing home rates and payment systems. And they're moving forward with two separate bills that will start a critical conversation about how can we look at creating equity and making that the funding formulas for nursing homes are more equitable across the state, but also starting to have the conversation about how can we start to spend more and looking at access to in-home services, not in just those larger communities, but really across the state. It'll be something we'll be watching very closely and making sure that we keep our members in the conversation about what's the future of long-term care in North Dakota.
Yeah, and then the last one I'll just take, because I've been kind of the point for us, is AARP North Dakota is going to support what's known as a primary belt law, or a primary seatbelt law, to enhance seatbelt use amongst North Dakota drivers. And it's really the intent to reduce crash-related deaths. I've been participating in a broad working group with safety advocates, county officials, legislators, law enforcement, to look at how can we enhance safe driving. And I might add, we have excellent volunteers who, when we're not in pandemic times, teach driver safety classes that some of you watching probably have had a chance to partake in. And so we've certainly visited with Pete Kuhn, who's this coordinator with that, to check and make sure it fits with what they're teaching and doing that. But that's going to be heard on Friday as well, and working on that. So the cool thing about this is we'll put this link in there. You can find all of the links to watch all of those hearings online. Janelle mentioned this earlier. You can watch the actual committee hearings online. Actually, you can testify online now. We'll put the links of where you can watch those online. They're all on our North Dakota Advocacy team page, which we'll drop that link in the comments after this as well. Janelle, if you could leave folks with having to do one thing today that would make a big difference, what would you ask them to do today?
I'd say contact your representative. Legislators love to hear from constituents, and they need to know why bills like the prescription drug transparency bill is important to you and why it will impact your life and the life of your loved ones. So make sure you check out the action link that's posted in the comments, and we'll make sure you have other ways to do it. But just send a quick note to your representative and encourage them to support the prescription drug transparency bill.
Thank you, Janelle. It's great to have you here. We are in the thick of it starting next week. And so we're planning to do this every Friday at 2:30 p.m. to provide you an all things advocacy update. Some weeks it'll be me hosting, other weeks it'll be different people hosting, and we hope to bring on different guests as we're able to do that. So we encourage you to tune in either on our our facebook.com /AARPND page or on YouTube at youtube.com/AARPND. With that, this was the January 8th All Things Advocacy Update. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
See you next week. Thanks.